I absolutely believe that this is a watershed in American history, yes. The question is what kind of watershed? And that chapter remains to be written. Is this the end of a dark chapter in our history or the beginning of a darker chapter in our history?
Utah's governor summing up what so many are dealing with as we learn new details about the shooting death of Charlie Kirk. I'm Del Walters in Washington, D.C. You are watching On the Scene. Here's the very latest. Authorities are now saying that this man is the shooter. He is 22-year-old Tyler Robinson. Utah's governor saying investigators believe that Robinson acted alone and had a rather extensive plan of what he wanted to do. Robinson reportedly expressing opposition to Charlie Kirk's conservative viewpoints in the past, both in person and on social media. Our national correspondent Mara Barrett is on the ground force in Utah. She has been closely tracking this investigation. And Mara, you just learned new details about the booking documents. What can you tell us?
Yeah, Del. So as we learned the name and identity of the shooting suspect, the shooter suspect as law enforcement laid out, we're able to dig into a little bit more about what we know about him, especially as it is still unclear from law enforcement officials what the potential motive is. We know from the arrest documents and from law enforcement that he was arrested down in Washington County after family members convinced or notified police to turn him in after he made it clear or implied that he was the shooter. And so Washington County is down about 3.5 hours southwest of where I stand in Orem, Utah, outside of Utah Valley University. And so it takes about, it's quite a drive overnight. And so the booking documents are dated for 4 a.m. this morning. And the initial arrest charges, the booking charges, were filed as aggravated murder, a felony discharge of a firearm causing serious bodily injury, and obstruction of justice. Now, these are just the initial booking charges. We expect the FBI to file those official charges early next week. But given the severity of the arrest and the details as we've been tracking all of the developments of this case, he was booked without the opportunity for bail. He's being held in Utah County Jail back up near where I am. Just south of Salt Lake City. And so we learned some other details in terms of his voter registration. He's registered as unaffiliated, which is how Utah qualifies its independent voter registration. It's unclear if he participated in the past general election. And we do know that he briefly attended Utah State University, which is just north of here, about 45 minutes up in Salt Lake City. But the university said that he was only a student for about a semester. So we're looking to learn more information about him, his political leanings, any other details about what could inform the motive on this. But the investigators say, FBI Director Kash Patel said they have received more than 11,000 leads and tips, and they are chasing down every single lead so they can make the most informed decision when they issue those charges. As we've talked about before, the Utah governor is very adamant about pursuing the highest extent in terms of charges and intends to pursue that death penalty potential as well here in Utah, Del.
So, Laura, the governor also calling out the problem of disinformation on social media. Officials, as you know, have been battling a lot of confusion. What did he have to say about that?
Yeah, it was actually very interesting that the governor led off this press conference, I will say. Typically, in these types of cases, the information is deferred to law enforcement, but law enforcement was the issue about a lot of the misinformation that we received right at the beginning of this case. FBI Director Kash Patel had tweeted that a subject who they suspected to be the shooter was brought into custody. That turned out not to be the case. They were released, and then there wasn't any connection with the two individuals that had been brought in for interrogation to the shooting. And so you saw the governor take the lead on this. He had previously mentioned at other press and last night's press conference that they had been facing disinformation from foreign actors, as well as a lot of speculation, as we tend to see in these cases, from internet sleuths. The other element the governor brought up, which was interesting and notable to see at the time of announcing the arrest, was the discussion about where do we go from here as a culture, as a society, as Americans, Republicans? Can we, he asked, turn down the temperature, tone down the hateful political rhetoric? This is something that's very consistent for Governor Cox. He's talked about bringing down the partisan divide. And as he mentioned today, he said this is what spurs violence and violent actions. And he had a message for the younger generation as well. But I want you to hear I want you to hear him speak on this a little bit from this morning.
Political violence is different than any other type of violence for lots of different reasons. One, because in the very act that Charlie championed of expression, that freedom of expression that is enshrined in our founding documents, in having his life taken in that very act, makes it more difficult for people to feel like they can share their ideas. Over the last 48 hours, I have been as angry as I have ever been, as sad as I have ever been.
And so in talking about that potential fear for other individuals, there's been conversation, and I know we talked about this yesterday, Del, but about whether public officials, public figures need to either ramp up security or pull back on public events. President Trump this morning in an interview saying that he hopes that people don't do that and don't act out of fear, even though security appears to be an issue in this sense. And so as Governor Cox continues to discuss this, he had a message for the younger generation, the generation that Charlie Kirk so famously appealed to and brought into the political conversation. He said that they are inheriting a generation of politics that is more enraging, more filled with rage than he's ever seen before. And he said that he hopes that they can figure out how to help tone it down. He also mentioned that this is a good time for people to get off of social media, to not dig into the conspiracy theories, and to quite literally, quote, he said, I'm quoting him, to go touch grass and go be with your community, go be with your family, and have conversations based in reality. And so I thought that was just a really poignant statement to be made immediately following these crucial details to this investigation, especially after such a busy and rapid 33 hours for these investigators, Del.
Mara Barrett for us in Utah. We will keep checking in with you this morning as new information develops. And as Mara was saying at this morning's news conference announcing the arrest, the Utah Governor Spencer Cox did talk about the dangers of social media. Take a listen to what he had to say.
We are not wired as human beings biologically. Historically, we have not evolved in a way that we are capable of processing those types of violent imagery. And by the way, we've seen another one with a gruesome stabbing very recently that went viral. This is not good for us. It is not good to consume. Social media is a cancer on our society right now. And I would encourage, again, I would encourage people to log off, turn off, touch grass, hug a family member, go out and do good in your community.
Touch grass. We're joined now by Scripps News Senior Political Director Andrew Rafferty. And Raff, we watched this play out in real time. And I remember you saying, as you looked at your cell phone, these images are horrific.
Yeah, and we were sitting in these same seats. We were hearing this eyewitness testimony from the ground in Utah from individuals who were at this Kirk event, and then seemingly seeing it confirmed in some of those images and videos from that event, images and videos that, as Mara has been reporting on, these social media sites really struggle to scrape off of their platforms. And I think there is something that the governor was just speaking about earlier this morning, this sort of compounding effect when you have these tragic instances, and you think of the murder of anyone, regardless of their political ideology, is tragic, but then you have it captured on camera. And it wasn't just Charlie Kirk this week. I think a lot of people were seeing the video from the young woman in Charlotte who was stabbed to death on that commuter train, also captured on video. And so this isn't necessarily new when it comes to thinking about John F. Kennedy, the Zapruder film, seeing some of these captured. But what is new is that, well, it's becoming way more ubiquitous because of the prevalence of whether it be security cameras or cell phones, but also the level of detail and the graphic nature of that detail. And I think that's the governor right there was saying this is not good for Americans to be able to have this easy access to.
What does it say, though, about social media that days later, as we as a network, by the way, still choose not to show those graphic images worth talking about, but those images can still be found online? Why is it so tough for some of these social media websites to just take it down?
Yeah, well, tech regulation always is behind the times, essentially. It is really, really hard for these companies to be able to keep up with every instance of this stuff being posted. And we've asked them, specifically Maura Barrett, who's our business and tech reporter, has asked these companies, why is it that you can still log on to, whether it be TikTok or X, and see these images, and despite their best efforts, the algorithms, the regulations, the policies just aren't there, and the regulation from government also isn't necessarily there, and that's something that these companies have largely wanted to avoid any sort of overseeing federal regulation. But we do know that despite the seemingly best efforts of these social media platforms, there's simply no way for them, as we sit here today, Del, to totally scrub the internet of some of this really graphic content.
The governor's saying today that words are not violence, violence is violence, but there are calls to lower the political temperature in this country, with both sides pointing at each other and also pointing inward, with the possible exception of the White House. What does it say when the person at the top is pointing fingers at the other side of the political aisle? And can anything progress with that being a factor?
It was interesting. Another thing that the governor said today was, quote, "We need moral clarity." And there's no reason to believe that was specifically directed at President Trump, but the juxtaposition of how these two leaders have framed this is striking, in the sense that one has been very clearly pointing the finger at the Democrats, at their political opponents, and another calling for unity. So I think one of the keys will be to see how this continues to progress through Congress. We heard from Nate Reed, who was up on Capitol Hill throughout this week during that shooting, when news was spreading of Kirk's shooting and ultimately his death. There was some pretty passionate reactions, and there were a handful of members who were immediately finger pointing. Some of it was at the media, some of it was at Democrats, at liberals. But this comes at a time when lawmakers across the political spectrum are worried about their safety. We've seen some members cancel public events over the past few days out of concerns about violence. And as we heard today, it does feel like we are at a bit of an inflection point, and exactly what voice wins out in terms of finger pointing versus calls for unity, I think is going to be key.
I date back to the generation of JFK, MLK, RFK, Kennedy, King, and Kennedy. Those political assassinations actually shaped the nation and the dialogue that followed, but there are some things that are different. And it bears pointing out, at that time, the .22 was the weapon of choice. Nowadays, it seems to be a high-powered rifle. We also had a nonviolent movement which would diffuse much of these tensions. What does it say that we're on the left, we're on the right, but there does not seem to be that person or persons in the middle saying, let's achieve our differences through nonviolent protest?
Nonviolent protest, I think, we do see a fair amount of nonviolent protest on a more localized level, perhaps. I'm thinking about what we've seen here where we are, Del, in D.C., with protests that are against the National Guard and other federal law enforcement having come into the nation's capital. But when it comes to sort of what access people have to some of those weapons, weapons that you're describing, which seemingly do make attempted long-range shooting more a viable option. There, you don't need to be some specifically highly trained individual in order to pull off some of these killings. Obviously, that makes it more difficult too for law enforcement, especially for somebody like Charlie Kirk, not an elected official, somebody who's done, you know, a bunch of these types of events. And, you know, I'm sure we'll learn a little bit more about what sort of threats he and his team were getting leading up to that event. But as we sit here today, it didn't seem like there was necessarily anything out of the ordinary.
Our senior political director, Andrew Rafferty. Raf, as always, we thank you very much.
Thanks, so.
watching Scripps News, part of the Scripps News Group.
Intellectual growth is at the core of pursuing a college degree. With it often comes differences of opinion.
We still have that freedom of speech, and we should still fight for that freedom, and we shouldn't be silent.
As one of Tennessee's largest universities, MTSU frequently welcomes guest speakers to campus.
Dr. Fauci should be in prison for what he did over the last year.
Having children is more important than having a good career. Sometimes controversial ones, like Charlie Kirk.
Even though he was very pro Second Amendment right, that doesn't mean he should have died at the hand of a gun.
They have to understand that this was a man with a family. There was more to him than just being a conservative.
For students here, his assassination was gut-wrenching to watch unfold.
There were so many people around it that had to witness that and had to, live with that now.
I'm very disgusted, disheartened.
At the same time, it's fueled even more debate.
I understand he was like a big figure, but also have the same energy towards school shootings, I think.
MTSU President Sidney McPhee says differences of opinion and freedom of expression are encouraged among students. But for staff members, public employees, he says trust is essential. That's why McPhee says the university fired its assistant dean of students after she posted a Facebook comment many felt compromised her ability to remain fair and even-handed.
I don't think this type of speech is helpful to anyone. She may not have liked him, but that does not mean she has to say something like this about the man.
Working with students from all different backgrounds, I just think that was completely out of pocket to say.
It actually deepens my trust with the administration of this campus, know that we won't tolerate stuff like that.
And despite the tragedy and controversy,
Taking guns is the beginning of the end of the rest of your freedoms.
these students say they still plan to speak their minds, hoping their voices can help shape a more respectful climate. In Murfreesboro, Aaron Cantrell, Scripps News Group.
We all idolized him. He was a great inspiration to all of us.
When she was 17, Aubrey Moore was inspired to become a political activist, and Charlie Kirk provided the spark.
He'd get on stage and just, the electricity sent through the building.
Aubrey got to meet Kirk twice during her time as an ambassador with Turning Point USA, the conservative organization that brought together young people from across the country.
You sit and you talk to him, and he's just so excited to talk to you and anything related to the movement and Gen Z.
Through Turning Point USA, she traveled to political events and was part of an outreach trip to Israel. Since then, Kirk's influence only grew, and he was credited with helping President Trump win the 2024 election. Outspoken Florida Congresswoman Ana Paulina Luna was also a former Turning Point USA member. She says she blames Kirk's killing on hateful rhetoric from the left.
He's my friend. He's part of the reason why I'm in office right now, and it's awful that it's taking this type of stuff to happen very publicly for people to realize what they're doing is wrong.
Aubrey, like so many others, are still shocked by Kirk's death. She had hoped what she was seeing online was some sort of AI creation.
We're still kind of getting over the shock, and the real sadness is really starting to hit.
Back in 2020, I talked with Aubrey about the TikTok page she started called the Republican Hype House. Her page eventually got to 1.2 million followers, using the platform to appeal to young people. At the time, she told me how her page would team up with the liberal Hype House, producing video duets and a live stream to raise money for coronavirus relief.
There's such a stereotype of the right hates the left and the left hates the right. And I think if we break that, especially with these upcoming generations, we may have some more peaceful elections.
TikTok eventually banned both pages. Now, 5 years later, the divide between political parties seems greater than ever, but Moore says Kirk's influence will live on.
There's such a fire in the community right now, and you take someone that speaks truth away and you create.
Chapel, Eric Waxler, Scripps News Group.
legacy is just the start of everything right now.
This is Miyu Oda des Hotels. She volunteers as an ambassador for Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk's nonprofit organization for conservative students.
He's a very nice guy.
Miyu met Kirk just last year.
Not at all. This should get tougher.
I remember it like it was yesterday. It was March 20th, 2024 at 7:20 p.m.
That's when Kirk visited San Diego State on one of his popular tours. Kirk was known for fostering engaging political debates, giving students on campuses across the country the chance to prove him wrong.
Wherever you stand with Charlie, he was okay with it. And he was accepting of it. And he may have been controversial in his response to you, but regardless, he didn't want to control you.
Miyu tells me she learned the proper ways to handle civil discourse from Turning Point and Kirk.
Starting off with thank you for your opinion.
Her respect for Kirk goes beyond politics.
I truly valued his faith. Just to make a global movement is also just admirable.
Of the greatest American comeback.
That global movement resonating, mostly with young adults.
I truly believe that he is the reason why President Trump won his election and had such huge margins with engagement with young adults. Charlie also took the opportunity to engage and pour his heart into the younger generation. And I don't think we've ever really seen that done before.
That's why she believes Charlie Kirk's legacy is just beginning.
Overcoming all these odds is one of the greatest stories ever told.
Danny Miskell, Scripps News Group.
After the break, a live look at today's top stories.
Welcome back to On the Scene. I'm Del Walters in Washington, D.C. Let's get you caught up on some of today's top stories. That plane with more than 300 South Korean workers on board has now landed in South Korea. They were picked up in that immigration raid last week at a Hyundai battery factory in Georgia. South Korea's president is now calling on the White House to improve the U.S. visa system. He says that Korean companies will likely hesitate to make new investments in this country until that happens. President Trump, meanwhile, saying he will send in the National Guard to Memphis, Tennessee, to address crime concerns. The president claiming that both the city's Democratic mayor and Tennessee's Republican governor support the move. But the Shelby County mayor criticized the plan, saying that no one was happy with what he called an occupation. The White House hasn't confirmed whether local officials actually requested that deployment. Memphis police recently reporting crime is at a 25-year low. The man accused of assassinating Charlie Kirk is being held at the Utah County Jail. Authorities arresting 22-year-old Tyler Robinson on suspicion of aggravated murder charges, obstruction of justice, and firearms charges. That according to a court affidavit that was just released. The judge ordering that he now be held without bail. 4 more charges are expected to be released early next week. That is just one side of this story, by the way. The other side, of course, is playing out in our political discourse. Scripps News White House correspondent Haley Bull is live for us in Washington, D.C. And Haley, how is the Trump administration responding to Charlie Kirk's suspected killer now being caught?
Yeah, Del, President Trump announcing that arrest during an interview with Fox and Friends this morning, where he said he hopes that the suspect receives the death penalty. Trump, who also continued his praise of Charlie Kirk, giving him credit for the youth vote, also noted he intends to go to Kirk's funeral. Vice President J.D. Vance, of course, flew to Utah yesterday to be with Kirk's family and accompanied them aboard Air Force Two with Kirk's casket. Vance considered Charlie Kirk someone he called a, quote, true friend. And the vice president released a statement after that arrest on X, saying he was grateful to officials for the time and resources in this case, saying, quote, this is a big breakthrough, and everyone who helped, from the law enforcement professionals to the people giving tips, deserves our credit and gratitude. In some ways, the investigation is still in the early days, but I do believe we have the shooter in custody. Say a prayer for Erica Kirk and those 2 beautiful babies. We took a big step this morning in getting justice for Charlie and for his family. Thanks be to God for that. Charlie Kirk, of course, as we have been saying over the past couple days, is someone who was considered close with many people within the Trump administration and a very influential conservative voice, particularly among the youth with his creation of Turning Point USA. So we are continuing to follow for any updates from the White House today on that front, Del.
Haley, the president also talking about the other story that we just mentioned, sending more National Guard troops into other cities across this country. Of course, it began with Washington, D.C., where you are. What can you tell us about that?
Well, the White House isn't offering further details on what that plan specifically looks like, but the president announcing that the next city he intends to send the National Guard and federal resources to would be Memphis, Tennessee. It is one of a number of cities Trump has hinted at over the past several weeks. Notably, he has often talked about Baltimore, Chicago, which he says he would have preferred, and New Orleans, and indicated he wanted to be asked to send those resources. In that same interview this morning, the president claimed the mayor and governor are happy about this. Memphis is, of course, in a Republican-led state, but Democratically led itself. We are hearing from the governor this afternoon. Governor Lee noted that he has been in contact with the administration for months to develop what he called a, quote, multi-phased strategic plan to combat crime. Lee saying that this will include the Tennessee National Guard, the FBI, Highway Patrol, and local police, noting that he has authorized more Highway Patrol in the area to work with police on what he called Operation Viper, which he described as an FBI mission with a task force. The governor stating, quote, I'm grateful for the president's unwavering support and commitment to providing every resource necessary to serve Memphians, and I look forward to working with local officials and law enforcement to continue delivering results. Now, we have reached out to the mayor's office as well for their reaction, but local media, Del, reported just on Thursday that the mayor stated that he was informed that the governor and president were considering this deployment to Memphis, saying, quote, "I'm committed to working to ensure any efforts strengthen our community and build on our progress." So we are following for any details. The National Guard not providing any updates at this point. But take a listen to what the president said earlier when he made this announcement.
We're going to Memphis. Memphis is
that's the next city.
Deeply troubled. And the mayor is happy. He's a Democrat mayor. The mayor is happy. And the governor, Tennessee, the governor is happy. Deeply troubled. We're going to fix that just like we did Washington. I would have preferred going to Chicago. I said, let me ask you a question. So we're going to Memphis. I'm just announcing that now, and we'll straighten that out.
National Guard?
National Guard and anybody else we need. And by the way, we'll bring in the military, too, if we need it.
As you mentioned, Del, the president had already activated those resources here in Washington, D.C., but also previously the National Guard in L.A. That is something that has been tied up in legal challenges as well. Del?
Scripps News White House correspondent Haley Beauforce. Haley, thank you very much.
His name is Desmond Hawley. He's 16 years old, obviously a student at Evergreen High School.
The sheriff's office confirming what Denver 7 Investigates first reported earlier in the morning. 16-year-old Desmond Hawley shot two classmates. before turning the gun on himself.
There are cameras inside of the school, which is very powerful and important for us in our investigations. We're able to track his movement throughout the school.
And those cameras will help investigators answer key questions. Sheriff's Office saying at this time it will withhold all video from surveillance and body-worn cameras.
I can't talk about what's been found at the suspect's house because I don't know. But I think that they found valuable information for our case.
Denver 7 Investigates captured this exclusive video shortly before sunset Wednesday night. Nearly a dozen law enforcement cars moved in to execute the search warrant. Specifics of what they uncovered were not disclosed, but they did find enough to reach this conclusion.
Based on some of the information that we're seeing about this suspect is that he was radicalized by some extremist network.
Tony Kovaleski, Scripps News Group.
The topic of suicide can be a difficult one to talk about, and that certainly rings true in faith-based communities. Greg Horn was 32 when a flood changed his life.
I went from ready to be a millionaire in my mid-30s to being $2 million in debt overnight. You know, lost my business, my home, and unexpectedly my marriage too.
Greg had thoughts about ending his life, but his faith in God and Christian community made a profound impact.
It's a game changer when you let just one person know. And I had people do that for me, and that's why I'm here today.
Not everyone has experienced that same level of support.
I was a new Catholic many years ago when my husband Connor died by suicide. And so I really experienced the church not really being there for me, but me being a part of a church service every week that was incredibly healing. And I thought, boy, wouldn't it be great if the church was there to support me in my journey of traumatic grief.
Both Melinda and Greg are working to change the ways faith-based communities approach the topic.
Stigma has really hindered suicide being something that we've talked about.
We sometimes make that look like it's a sign of weakness. You should have more faith.
This Saturday, the Centro de San Juan Diego is hosting a Mass for Suicide Healing and Remembrance. It's a time to promote healing for those who have lost loved ones and an opportunity to open up and have these tough conversations.
The greatest lie I think the enemy plants in people's minds is that you can't tell anybody. You need to keep it a secret. And once you reveal, I'm a firm believer that with the revealing, it starts the healing.
What I'm seeing now by raising this and having these sorts of services within a church, people are feeling supported. They're feeling heard. They're not feeling judged.
The Mass starts Saturday at 3 p.m. and it's open to everyone. Caleb Barnes, Scripps News Group.
I'm Ellen Ice outside of the College of Education here on UK's campus. They recently received a grant to be able to provide services to veterans-based organizations.
I think the picture that we're looking at has to change.
Dr. David Pascal-Haig says that picture is actually more of a statistic that is startling.
Veterans are oftentimes found to be twice as likely to die by suicide than their civilian counterparts.
Dr. Pascal-Haig is the head of the Community Mental Health Clinic at UK. He's spearheading an effort to get more veterans with mental health clinicians. And for him, it's personal. His brother Daniel served in the Marines from 2003 to 2007, deploying to the Middle East twice.
We are blessed and lucky to have him home. But since he's been home, he's continued to lose his fellow veterans to suicide and other mental health concerns.
That requires a specialized lens from their providers.
They do face unique needs, right? Reacclimating to civilian life, reacclimating to trying to, be in a 40-hour a week job.
He hopes by the College of Education offering in-person and online counseling and workshops for free, more veterans may come through their doors.
We can't expect veterans to, one day wake up and think, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to finally call that therapist. These are folks who have been trained in independence and finished the mission, and that has served our country, and we have to be able to reach out to them.
It's up to us to create that opportunity.
Anyone in our community can be trained to intervene and save a life.
Ellen Ice, Scripps News Group.
On 9/11, on this day of remembrance, an ailing local man's mission to keep his daughter's memory alive would take him to the Mission San Diego de Alcala. Inside the church Diora Bodley once attended.
And the grief does not ever go away, ever.
Her father, Mark Borza, lights candles in her memory.
You eventually come to terms with being able to live with it.
ABC 10 News first spoke with loved ones of Bodley back in 2003, 2 years after the 20-year-old college student was killed when United Flight 93 was hijacked, crashing into a Pennsylvania field, killing all on board, leaving Bodley's family.
It's the first time in my life that I actually felt air escape from me.
Mired in shock and grief. Over the years, her friends and family have honored her memory with benefit concerts and other fundraisers. And for more than a decade, Borza and a group of family and friends have also been lighting candles on the anniversary. 40 candles, one for each victim aboard Flight 93.
The top of my list is making sure Diora is not forgotten. Nobody that day is ever forgotten.
For Borza, doing his annual tribute is getting harder. He was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease in 2016. He says in the past year, his voice has weakened.
The mobility has definitely gone downhill.
Along with his balance.
I've taken a few falls and hurt myself.
Despite those challenges, Borza made his way to the church this day as he and his group carried on with their solemn tradition.
I know the saying, never forget. We're trying to make sure that it's not just a slogan.
How long will you keep doing this?
Forever. I may have to be carried here, but I will be coming here as long as I possibly can.
Michael Chen, Scripps News Group.
The memorial in front of Turning Point's headquarters continuing to grow as more people are leaving flowers, notes, and sometimes even teddy bears for Kirk's children. I spoke to people who were praying in front of this memorial, asking them whether the recent news and updates from the FBI have brought them any closure. They say it has somewhat because they believe in the justice system, but still, a man they listen to almost every day is gone.
Like, there will never be another Charlie Kirk. I mean, he wasn't scared to do what? Yeah, he cannot be replaced. Like, he had everything. You see Charlie Kirk, and he is not. You can't replace him. He is that guy that you know that he was going places. You know, in the future, you potentially saw the next president.
People I spoke to were also shocked that it was the father of the suspect that ended up turning his own son in. They say that they are praying for that father, knowing that this individual made an extremely hard choice. Reporting in Phoenix, Adam Mintzer for Scripps News Group.
In the aftermath of the assassination of Charlie Kirk, there's been a lot of talk about political discourse, rhetoric, vitriol, and violence, with elected leaders on both sides of the aisle here calling for a de-escalation.
I hope I have the correct number.
Hours after conservative political influencer Charlie Kirk was killed at Utah Valley University, House Democrats received this voicemail.
You should leave the state. You should find somewhere else to live, you murderous terrorist animals, you despicable subhuman, violent, disgusting animals. You murdered that man in front of his family, you evil pieces of subhuman garbage.
We don't know who the shooter was. You know, we don't know what their intent was. Somebody was murdered, someone was executed, and we all agree that that was wrong.
House Minority Leader Angela Romero says she's seen political vitriol increase in recent years.
I think it's escalated, but I think we can tone it down if we all work together. But that means we all have to work together, and I don't know if everyone's willing to do that.
Political violence should never happen. Any type of violence should never happen. And the fact that it's continuing to happen, you know, the Minnesota shootings that happened a couple months ago, or a few months ago, and now this, and, you know, we can do better.
House Speaker shares that view.
And I hope that it starts to tone down some of the rhetoric that's out there, some of the things, the hateful things that are being said on all sides, and that we're able to come together.
Maury Giles heads Braver Angels, a group that tries to encourage healthy debate. They worked with Governor Spencer Cox on his Disagree Better initiative.
We get into this notion of feeling like there's a culture war that I have to fight for. The problem is that in doing that, and with the tools we have of social media, we dehumanize each other.
Giles says he hopes this is a wake-up call for everyone.
We have to be able to choose to do in this moment right now today is, how am I going to respond? Am I going to cascade to the corner of my tribe for fear of not being loyal to that tribe, or not doing what I need to do to not be alienated by them? Or am I going to step up and say, hold on a second, vigorous debate is a hallmark of the American experiment, but with contempt is not the way.
The Utah Department of Public Safety says it does investigate threats and provides security for elected officials. The speaker says they will also be reviewing that in the days to come. At the United States Capitol, there's also talk about increasing security for elected officials when they return to their home states.
I wouldn't be truthful if I said this didn't give me pause. Right? I've been in very vulnerable situations, and I've always said to myself, oh, it's Utah. I don't need to worry.
Ben Winslow, Scripps News Group.
Rewind to May 4th, 1970.
Began moving across.
This was the scene at Kent State University when the Ohio National Guard fired on anti-Vietnam War protesters, killing 4 students and injuring 9 others.
Nobody deserves death.
Fast forward to April 2024. The university found itself divided again, this time on whether or not Kyle Rittenhouse should be allowed to speak on campus after he shot 3 people during a protest in 2020, killing 2 and injuring 1. Rittenhouse was found not guilty.
Hosting somebody such as Kyle is really a spit in the face
to our integral history.
Wish that more people would come out and support people that are brave like Kyle did.
And today, while students remain split over Charlie Kirk's political ideology,
he was someone to look up to.
He said it was worth a few gun deaths a year. He was pro-gun, and he just became that statistic.
I agreed with some of his stuff. I didn't agree with some of his stuff.
They are united in sympathy.
You know, regardless of how you feel about him, seeing that man be slaughtered for what is effectively just free discussion is horrible.
An acknowledgement that violence is not the answer.
I really just felt like it was another pointer of why we got to control gun violence.
He was just trying to influence people's lives, and his life was taken for that.
The sentiment echoed across campus. Free speech should always be protected.
Free speech is paramount, frankly, especially on college campuses.
For something like that to happen, Utah, that's their, Kent State 1970s moment. And all it does is scare away, free speech.
If Kent can come together here, maybe the nation can too.
I'm hoping this unites the country and doesn't further divide it, because right now we don't need any more violence.
Nadina Busada, Scripps News Group.
After the break, a live look at today's top stories.